Isn't it beautiful? It's calm, it's serene, it's quiet. The sun just breaking over the waters of the loch. Water, when it's like that, it can be inviting. Not that inviting that I'm going to get in, but it can be inviting. Water is one of those things that people love. We know people that go outdoor wild swimming. People that go up to the pool when it's open, something that a lot of people are finding difficult just now. Water can be inviting because it refreshes us, it renews us. But water in a lot of stories in Scripture can also be something that brings some sort of destruction, some sort of chaos, some sort of fear. And that can be seen in our reading today. A reading where Jesus sends his disciples away into the boat after he's finished teaching so that he can go and get some time to pray, some time alone, time that he'd been craving for a few days. And as the disciples sailed out, presumably things were going well, and then the wind started to get up. The wind started to get up and the boat started to shake. The disciples were scared. They were fearful. They were fearful because they didn't know how to stop it. They didn't know what to do. Their leader, their captain was missing. He was elsewhere. Who would they turn to in this time? Jesus wasn't there. Who was it that stepped up next? Who knew what to do? Despite there being fishermen on that boat, there didn't seem to be much calm, and the disciples were scared. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was scared on a boat with the waves buffeting it around, the last thing that would bring me calm was seeing a ghostly apparition on the water walking towards me. I think the disciples were probably the same. Maybe they thought their time was up. Maybe they thought, this is it, we're done for. But as that ghostly figure appeared, it's me. A familiar voice out of the chaos, out of the wind and the waves, a familiar voice calling them to be calm. It's me. Now Peter immediately recognised that it was Jesus. Perhaps Peter was the one who wanted to show some leadership. Instead of calling Jesus over, he decides to get out of the boat and start walking towards Jesus. I don't know what he was thinking. It's not a natural reaction. Hang on, we're in a storm. Here's a ghostly figure coming. I know what I'll do. I'll walk towards it. But that's what Peter does. He starts confidently. But then, very soon, and very quickly, he starts to get wet feet and ankles, calves, up to his knees. He starts sinking, he starts panicking, and he goes down quicker and quicker. And all of a sudden, Jesus' hand is there, and he reaches out and pulls him out the water. In this story, Peter often gets a bit of a bad rap. You of little faith, why did you doubt? There are different translations that are much more gentle. But Jesus knew this story wasn't about Peter. At least, not necessarily about having little faith. That perhaps was something that came in a bit later. Perhaps it was said jokingly around the table when they got back on the boat, but that wasn't Jesus. Jesus didn't chastise people for that. Instead, it's the action of Jesus that we need to focus on here. As Peter looks to Jesus for help, Jesus reaches in and pulls him to safety. This story is not about Peter and his lack of faith, but about Jesus and his overwhelming love, his grace for us all, no matter who we are, what we've done, and what situation we find ourselves in. Jesus is there to pull us out of that water. There are times in our lives where our feet get wet, our ankles get wet, sometimes even our shoulders get wet as we begin to sink. But isn't it nice to know that in the midst of those times, in the midst of that challenge, that God is there, that Jesus is there, ready to pull us out of that difficult place, ready to offer us support, ready to be our life belt, ready not just to save, but to give us life, to allow us to experience life in all its fullness, allowing us to know we are loved. So no matter what happens, and no matter where we find ourselves, we will always find ourselves in those times when the wind buffets us around, the waves get too much for us and we begin to sink. But just like Peter discovered, there is always God to reach in a hand, to pull us out and to bring us to safety. This isn't about Peter's lack of faith, but it's about Jesus' love and grace for us all, that comes to us, that finds us, that reaches out to us when we least expect it, even when we don't know it. For that is God.